I wouldn't want to spend a night in any prison, let alone an evil one. And what do we mean by evil exactly? Well, haunted, of course, for the most part anyway. Prisons where the spirits of the inmates who spent the entirety of their lives there are still trapped within their walls, even into the afterlife. I'm your host James, and these are the top 10 evil prisons you would never want to spend a night in. And we're kicking off the list with Bodmin Jail in Cornwall, England. This formidable structure was erected in 1779 and served as a functioning prison for over 150 years, closing in 1927. Throughout its operation, the jail was the site of countless punishments and prisoners being put to death. The belief that the place is haunted is due to the grim conditions and traumatic events that occurred within its walls. Over the years, the prison housed inmates enduring overcrowding, harsh labor, and inhumane treatment. One of the most well-known spirits believed to haunt Bodmin Jail is that of Selina Wadge, a young woman convicted of infanticide in the 19th century. It's said that her tormented spirit wanders through the prison, and visitors and paranormal investigators reported hearing her cries and witnessing apparitions resembling her. The jail's chapel, where prisoners' unalivings took place, is another hotspot for paranormal activity. Visitors have reported unexplained voices and an overwhelming sense of doom while inside of the area. Number 9. Kwang Central Prison. Situated in the outskirts of Bangkok, Thailand, this place is still operational, notorious for its harsh conditions. Even though some particularly brutal practices have been banned, the facility was constructed to incarcerate extremely dangerous criminals, and a significant portion of them are on death row. One of the prison's infamous practices involves chaining inmates to leg irons during their first 3 months of their sentence. For those on death row, these leg irons are permanently welded onto them. Often referred to as Big Tiger, Kwang Central Prison lives up to its nickname as locals describe how it engulfs its inmates in a seemingly relentless cycle of suffering, almost like a death factory. The conditions inside the prison are harsh, with overcrowded cells, limited access to medical care, and inadequate sanitation. Inmates are often subjected to extreme heat and substandard food quality. And while some improvements have again been made to address these concerns, the prison remains a place to avoid at all costs. The psychological toll of confinement, the presence of death row, the severe living conditions, it just makes this prison a place you dread spending even a single hour in, let alone a night. Strongly advised you steer clear of this prison if you value your well-being, and if you've committed any crimes in Bangkok. Next on the list we have Holmesburg Prison. Holmesburg Prison, infamously known as the Terror Dome, became notorious for being the site of a number of highly unethical scientific experiments conducted on its inmates. These experiments were so inhumane that it's difficult to believe that stuff like this actually took place. This is like something you'd see in a Blumhouse movie. These experiments were overseen by Dr. Albert Kligman, a dermatologist who is basically a real-life mad scientist. Inmates, often driven by desperation and the promise of earning a meager sum of money, volunteered to be subjects in these experiments. Dr. Kligman subjected them to a wide range of horrifying stuff like exposure to microwave radiation, infection with various skin diseases, and biochemical experiments involving substances like dioxin, which was used in Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. Dr. Kligman was quoted describing how he felt the first time he arrived at the prison, and in his words, "All I saw before me were acres of skin. It was like a farmer seeing a fertile field for the first time." The conditions at Holmesburg Prison were horrific, to say the least, and the experiments conducted within its walls were a clear violation of very basic ethical standards. Number 7. La Sabaneta Prison. La Sabaneta Prison in Zulia, Venezuela earned a notorious reputation for its extreme levels of corruption and just deplorable conditions. Within its walls, reports of extortion and rampant violence were disturbingly common. The prison was effectively under the control of various gangs and criminal organizations, essentially operated by inmates themselves. Inmates within the prison often found themselves coerced into paying protection fees to the these groups merely to secure access to basic necessities like food and water. Corruption ran rampant throughout the prison, with both guards and officials often accepting bribes to turn a blind eye to the activities of the prisoners. The inhumane conditions at this prison prompted outrage from human rights organizations and the United Nations, leading to widespread calls for its closure, and the prison's environment was so poor that visiting it would have been strongly discouraged. In response to this escalating crisis and massive riot in which over 50 individuals lost their lives back in 2013, the Venezuelan government finally announced plans to shut down the prison. Inmates were transferred to alternative places, marking the end of an era of unimaginable suffering and brutality. Next up is Shepton Mallet. Shepton Mallet Prison in Somerset, England is renowned as one of the world's most haunted prisons. Its construction finished up in 1910, and it remained in active operation until 1990, changing ownership multiple times during its existence. At one point it served as a military prison under both British and American control during World War II, before reverting to British authority afterward. Once again, the prison is believed to hold the lingering spirits of past inmates who endured unimaginable suffering within it, where numerous executions by hanging occurred. The prison's haunting history and the countless lives that were affected by its harsh conditions make it a pretty foreboding and unsettling place for sure. At our number 5 spot is the West Virginia Penitentiary. Established in 1866, the prison operated for over a century before finally closing its doors in 1995. During its long history, the penitentiary saw tons of unalivings of prisoners, both by hanging and later by electric chair. Inmates also endured overcrowding, unsanitary conditions, and brutal treatment, leading to numerous grievances. And the prison saw a number of riots, escape attempts, and inmate violence was happening on a constant basis. One of the most famous ghostly residents is believed to be that of R.D. Wall, an inmate who lost his life during a 1929 prison riot. Visitors and paranormal investigators have reported hearing unexplained footsteps, disembodied voices, and sightings of a shadowy figure roaming the premises. The infamous Sugar Shack, a building used for solitary confinement and corporal punishment, is said to be particularly active with paranormal phenomena. At number 4, we have the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. Built between 1886 and 1910, this ominous building served as a prison for over a century until its closure in 1990. The prison was designed to rehabilitate young offenders, but its harsh conditions, overcrowding, and reports of violence gave it a dark reputation. Over the years, numerous prisoners endured the harsh conditions of the prison. Some met their end there. The prison saw its share of deaths, including those resulting from disease, accidents, and violence. One of the most famous reported hauntings at the prison involves the ghostly presence of the former warden and his wife, Helen. Visitors have claimed to experience encounters with these spirits, particularly in the warden's former office. They describe smelling Helen's perfume, and some have reported hearing ghostly voices, as if the spirits of the warden and his wife continue to linger, arguing from beyond the grave. These reported encounters have made Ohio State Reformatory a popular destination for paranormal enthusiasts and ghost hunters, but if you value a good night's sleep free from specters and spooks, just hit up a hotel instead. Knowing Ohio, though, it would probably be haunted too, or plagued by some weird cryptid. Next on the list is Maxwell Street Police Station. The Maxwell Street Police Station in Chicago, built in 1888 as a response to rising violence and crime in the neighborhood, has a dark history that has led it to being known as one of the most haunted places in the state. Over time, the police force meant to protect the community became infamous for their own brutality, and horrifying stories started to emerge regarding the treatment of inmates housed in the station's cells, particularly in the basement. Inmates at the Maxwell Street Police Station endured nightmarish torture at the hands of officers, often for the amusement of those in charge. And as these horrifying stories started getting around on the street, the station earned a bad reputation, being given several unsettling nicknames: the Old Red Fortress, Bloody Maxwell, and the wickedest police district in the world, to name just a few. Many visitors and paranormal enthusiasts have reported these eerie encounters within the station, especially in the basement, where inmates were subject to their torment. Unexplained sounds, voices, and sensations have been described, leading some to believe that these restless spirits of the prisoners continue to haunt the building. Number 2, the Tower of London. One of the most famous haunted locations in the world. Founded in 1066 by William the Conqueror, it has served various purposes throughout the years: a royal residence, a fortress, and a prison. The tower's reputation as a place of imprisonment and execution, particularly during the Tudor period, is what leads many to believe that the place is just brimming with ghosts. One of the most famous ghosts said to roam the tower is that of Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry. Anne Boleyn was infamously unalived within the tower's walls in 1536, accused of adultery and treason. Her ghost is often reported near the site of her death, with visitors claiming to have seen her headless apparition wandering the grounds. Another ghostly resident is Lady Jane Grey, the tragic 9 Days Queen who was held captive at the tower and ultimately lost her life in 1554. Her spirit is believed to haunt the tower's corridors, and sightings describe a semi-translucent figure dressed in white, mourning her untimely fate. And the tower also holds the legends of the ghostly White Lady, believed to be the spirit of Arbella Stuart, a cousin of King James I. Arbella was imprisoned in the tower for her claim to the English throne and died in captivity in 1615. Her spirit is said to wander the Queen's house where she was held, her presence often accompanied by the scent of roses. But finally, we have the Eastern State Penitentiary, built on the Quaker-inspired belief in the redemptive power of solitude. It introduced a revolutionary approach to incarceration. The prison was designed to isolate inmates from each other. They would endure prolonged periods of solitary confinement. Both guards and prisoners were forbidden from speaking, and extreme measures were implemented to suppress any form of noise. It sounds like hell. The penitentiary's strict rules often gave way to brutal punishments, too. Inmates endured a range of torturous punishments, including ice-cold water baths in the middle of winter, a quote-unquote mad chair designed to cut off circulation to certain extremities, and a dreaded basement cell known as the Hole, where prisoners were subjected to complete and utter darkness. That mixed with the lack of sound, yeah, that sounds, not good. With an absence of basic amenities in there as well. A number of people, including visitors and staff, have reported unsettling experiences within the building. Sightings of shadowy figures, the sounds of eerie wails, and even apparitions or faces manifesting on cell walls. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.